Thanks for joining me today. I have a question for you. What can you tell me about 12 inches and 1 foot? Give you a second to think about that. Okay, now that you're done talking to the screen, 12 inches and 1 foot. What can you tell me about them? Well, you're probably sitting there saying, well, they're the same thing. They're equal. They are. And that's what we're talking about today. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about unit conversion and how we deal with quantities given in different units that are the same thing, like inches and feet. They're both measurements of length, but we give them to you in different ways. So before we get into talking about how to convert units, let's talk fractions for a moment. So I know that most people probably don't like fractions. The majority of people are scared of them. They think they're weird and fractions are complicated, and I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe it has something to do with the way that a lot of us were taught, but fractions really aren't as complicated as people think they are. But we're going to talk about fractions for just a moment. So let's just take for a second that we have the fraction 4 thirds. And we're going to multiply that fraction by 21 over 4. I know, I'm getting weird, I'm giving an improper fraction, but 4 thirds times 21 fourths. Now, we all know, and we learned in grade school, that to multiply fractions, you multiply the numerators, the numbers on top, we multiply the numerators, and so that gives us 4 times 21, and then that's on top, and on the bottom we have 3 times 4. Now, what most people would probably think to do is go ahead and multiply those together. So 4 times 21 is going to be 84, and 3 times 4 is going to be 12, and then you'd have to divide 84 divided by 12 to get 7. Now, that's all well and good if you know 84 divided by 12 is 7. But there's a shorter way to do this without actually multiplying. You can take a step out of this, because you'll notice that if I have 4 and 4, 4 is on the top and 4 is on the bottom. So what that means is that those 4's actually cancel each other out, and instead you're left with 21 over 3, which equals 7. So it's a whole lot easier to do it that way if you cancel things out as you go. Now that is a very important aspect of unit conversion, and why I said we're going to stop and talk about fractions for a minute, because fractions are an integral part of how we do unit conversion. So unit conversion simply means multiplying a quantity by the right version of one to get a new unit. So we're converting from one unit to another. We're taking the quantity that we measured in some unit and we're changing that unit to something else, but we're not changing the quantity, okay? We do not change the quantity. So let's say I have this ruler here. This ruler is 12 inches long. If I say it's 12 inches, then it's 12 inches. But let's say I say it's 1 foot. It's the same length. I didn't change the length of this ruler by saying it's 12 inches or 1 foot. The number is different. Because an inch is smaller than a foot, I'm going to have a bigger number for inches than I do for feet, because inches is a smaller unit than foot. But 1 inch or 1 foot and 12 inches are the same length. So I'm not changing what it is, I'm just changing how I'm talking about it. And that is what unit conversion is. We're going to convert or change from one unit to another, but we're going to keep the quantity that we have the same. And we're going to do that by multiplying by the right version of 1. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at fractions again for a minute. If I have the fraction 4 over 12, and I want to multiply that by 1, that equals 4 over 12. Multiplying by 1 does not change what it is. We all should know that. So instead of multiplying by 1, I'm going to put here 4 divided by 4. It's still the same thing. 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1, because this divided by that, 4 divided by 4 is 1. They're equal quantities. Okay, so when we say we're going to divide by the right amount of 1, let's say I have 38 inches. Well, I want to get rid of that. I want to change it to something else, to a different unit. Well, I know that 1 foot equals 12 inches. So 1 foot divided by 12 inches, it's a fraction of equal quantities. Just like 4 over 4 equals 1, because 4 equals 4. If 1 foot equals 12 inches, then 1 foot over 12 inches equals 1. This equals 1. So we're multiplying by the right amount of 1 is the way I want to talk about it, because what we're doing is we're setting up a fraction in which our units will get changed. So this right version of 1 that we talk about, this fraction that we set up where we have equal quantities on top of each other, is called a conversion factor. And it's usually given to you in the form of an equality. One thing equals something else. So for example, we have 1 foot equals 12 inches. So this is a conversion factor. It's a equality that shows this quantity is equal to this quantity. This unit equals this unit. We also know that 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. So these are equal quantities, but they are different units. And these are our conversion factors. Now, we use these conversion factors to set up fractions to give us that right value of 1, just the right amount of 1. So some people are going to refer to this process as dimensional analysis, and some people refer to it as the factor label method. I personally call it the railroad tracks, because the way I do this, it ends up looking like you're drawing out railroad tracks with numbers on them. So let's get into how we do this. All right, so I'm going to give some conversion factors here. Let's say that 1 apple is equal to 8 grapes, and 3.5 grapes is equal to 7 raisins, and 29 raisins is equal to 1 banana. Now, these are just arbitrary, crazy little things that I made up here. So, but let's just say I have 15 apples, and I want to know 15 apples is going to equal how many grapes? 15 apples equals how many grapes? Now, it should be pretty easy for most of you to just look at and see that if 1 apple equals 8 grapes, then 15 apples is going to be 15 times 8. That's easy to do, but I want to show you the process, because we're not always going to have numbers that are quite this easy. So let me show you the process here. I have 15 apples, and I want to multiply that by something the right amount of 1. All right, so I'm going to multiply that by 1. Well, I'm going to multiply it by 1 as a fraction. So just like we did earlier when we had the 4 on the top and the 4 on the bottom and they canceled out, we're going to do the same thing with the units. I have apples and grapes are equated to each other right here in my conversion factor. So I'm going to set up my conversion factor so that my apples will cancel out, because this 15 apples is the same as writing 15 apples over 1. I can make any number a fraction by putting it over 1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have another fraction over here where I have apples on the bottom. Well, I'd have 1 apple right there. So 1 apple. Now my apples are going to cancel out. And so 1 apple is equal to 8 grapes. And since these two things are equal, just like 12 inches equals 1 foot and 4 equals 4, since these two quantities are equal, but they become 1. So I'm multiplying my quantity by 1. But by doing that, I change from apples to grapes. So I have converted the unit. And when I do that, in order to get the right number for my equal quantity, I then have to multiply my numbers. I would do 15 times 8, which is 120. So 15 apples is equal to 120 grapes. That is how this process works. Now, why do I have more than just that one conversion factor there? Well, let's say I wanted to figure out, okay, I have one apple and I'm going to barter and I'm going to trade. I have one apple, but I need to get a banana. I need to get bananas. Let's say I have 12 apples. So I have 12 apples. And I need to get a banana. How many bananas can I get with 12 apples? So let's figure that out. Equals how many bananas? If I'm going to barter and trade, and these are my conversions, how many bananas can I get with 12 apples? Well, if I have 12 apples, I'm going to put that over 1, the number I'm starting with, putting it over 1. Now, instead of a multiply, this is why I call it the railroad tracks, instead of a multiply, I want to put a vertical line here just to separate my fractions. So I want to have a conversion factor, I want to have a fraction equal to 1 with different units here to where my apples cancel out. And the only conversion factor I have with apples is the same one I had before. So we have 1 apple is equal to 8 grapes. Now that cancels out my apples. Notice I'm crossing out the units, not the numbers. That cancels out my apples, but it leaves me with grapes. I want bananas. So now I have to take my grapes and go to raisins. So I'm going to take my grapes and I'm going to continue on. So if I have grapes, 8 grapes, that means I want to have grapes down here. Now, how many grapes I put down here has to do with this conversion factor. This conversion factor says 3.5 grapes is equal to 7 raisins. So that means I'm going to have 3.5 grapes is equal to 7 raisins. So now my grapes are going to cancel out and I'm left with raisins. So if I am not done yet, now I can go from raisins to bananas. So I'm going to do another one. So now if I have raisins up here, I need to put raisins down here so that they will cancel out. So, and I know it's 29 raisins is equal to 1 banana. And so now my raisins will cancel and the unit I'm left with is the unit that I wanted to begin with. So now that I've done my math with all of my units and I've canceled the units out with using the right amount of 1 each time, I've canceled my units out to get the unit that I want. I now have to do this in my calculator. I'm going to multiply this out. Now, these are just fractions. Yes, I drew these vertical lines, but those are we're just multiplying fractions, just like we did at the very beginning. We're going to have 12 times 8 times 7. So I'm going to put that in my calculator, and I'm going to do 12 times 8 times 7, and I get 672. So I'll write that down here. That's 672. That's what's on the top. Now on the bottom I have 1 times 3.5 times 29. So 3.5 times 29 is 101.5. So now I have a fraction of 672 divided by 101.5. So that's going to give me 672 divided by 101.5 gives me an answer of 6.620689655. So we have multiplied all that out, and this is what the calculator gives us. But remember what we just talked about a couple videos ago, a couple lessons ago, significant figures. Now, conversion factors are considered constants or multipliers. So they have an infinite number of significant figures, so we don't worry about their significant figures. So the only number that matters for significant figures is the measurement at the beginning, the one we started with. All right, so 12 apples. This has 2 significant figures, so my answer can only have 2 significant figures. So the correct answer that we should write down is then 6.6 bananas. So 12 apples is equal to 6.6 bananas. So I can get 6.6 bananas if I have 12 apples. That is unit conversion. That is the basic process of unit conversion. We simply set up our fractions using the conversion factors that we have, and we go from there. So let's do another example using more realistic conversion factors, like, let's say 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch, and 12 inches equals 1 foot, and 5,280 feet are equal to 1 mile. So let's say I'm going to run a marathon. We're going to go 26.2 miles. And I want to know, how many centimeters is that? It's going to be a lot. But how many centimeters is that? Well, I'm going to start with the number I started with. We have 26.2 miles. I'm going to put that over 1. Now, if I want to go, I want my miles to cancel out, that means I need to have miles down here. Well, my conversion factors tell me that 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. So remember, these come from my conversion factors. And so now you can see that my miles cancel out. And I'm left with feet. Well, I don't want feet, I want centimeters. So we need to keep going. And if I have feet on the top, I need feet to be down here. And my conversion factors tell me that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So my feet are going to cancel out, and I'm going to be left with inches. But inches is not what I want. Centimeters is what I want, so I have to keep going. So we just keep going until we get to the unit that we want. So 12 inches, so I know that 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. Okay, so now my inches have canceled out. I'm left with centimeters, which is the unit that I wanted. As soon as I get the unit I'm looking for, or I'm trying to convert to, I stop. Okay, so now we notice everything on the bottom is 1, so all we have to do is multiply across the top. So I'm going to do my 26.2 times 5,280 times 12 times 2.54, and I get an answer of 4216481.28 centimeters. Okay, so 4,216,481.28 centimeters. That's a lot of centimeters in 26.2 miles. But this is not the correct answer based off of what we've been learning. So we know that we have to round this answer to the proper number of significant figures. And again, one more time, our conversion factors are all considered constants or multipliers. So we ignore their significant figures, and the only significant figures that matter are the number we started with. So 26.2 is 3 significant figures, so my answer can only have 3 significant figures. So there's 2 ways to do this. We can either write this as 4, 2, and that 6 is going to make this round up to a 2, and then those become zeros, so I can have 4,220,000 centimeters. That's one way to write it, with 3 significant figures. Or, and the way that I would prefer it be done in a lot of cases, is to have 4.22 times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we put it in scientific notation. So these are the two ways that we could write our answer. So once again, our unit conversion is simply multiplying by the right amount of 1 in order to cancel out and change the unit so that we get equal quantities. These are equal quantities in different units. So 26.2 miles is 4,220,000 centimeters. They are the same distance. They're the same. All right? So we have to make sure that we recognize that when we're doing unit conversion, we're not changing what the quantity is, we're just changing how we talk about it. 1 inch equals, or 1 foot equals 12 inches. So remember, think of a ruler. By calling it 1 foot does not change its length whenever I say 12 inches. That does not change how long this is. 1 foot equals 12 inches. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. They are the same quantity in different units. And that's all we're doing when we do unit conversion. Now, unit conversion with the metric system is actually a whole lot easier because the conversion factors are built into the metric system if you know what the metric units mean. And so let's talk about that for just a brief moment. So let's talk about metric units. We have the base unit, and so we're going to use in chemistry probably grams more than anything because, well, we measure mass a lot. So let's talk about grams. This is our base unit. So this would be the times 10 to the 0, our base unit. Now, when we talk scientific notation, this would be 10 to the 0. Now, if I want to go smaller, we have grams. The next thing would be a decigram. And a decigram is 1/10, or times 10 to the negative 1. It's 1/10. So we're dividing by 10. And then you have centigrams and milligrams. Each of those units this would be times 10 to the negative 2, times 10 to the negative 3. And going the other direction, we have the decagram, and then the hectogram, and the kilogram. All right, so this is times 10 to the 1. This is times 10 to the 2. This is times 10 to the 3. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is 1 kilo anything, so 1 kilogram is equal to 1 times 10 to the 3 grams. Okay? Or 1 decigram is equal to 1 times 10 to the minus 1 grams. So kilo is 10 to the 3rd, hecto is 10 to the 2, deca is 10 to the 1. So that's how these work. So when we do our conversions, if I want to know how many milligrams are there in 58 kilograms? Well, first off, we know that 1 kilogram is 1 times 10 to the 3rd grams, or 1,000 grams. So 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. And we know that 1 milligram is 1 times 10 to the negative 3 grams, or a milligram is 1/1000th of a gram. Another way of saying that is 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams. This is the conversion factor that I would be more willing to use. Okay, so if I want to know how many milligrams are in 58 kilograms, I have 58 kilograms, and 1 kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. And 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams. So you can see that the kilograms are going to cancel, the grams are going to cancel, I'm left with milligrams, and then my number is going to be 58 times 1,000 times 1,000. And that's the joy of the metric system when we're doing these conversions, is every time the conversion from one unit to another in the metric system is always going to be some multiple of 10. So really all I'm doing is multiplying by 1,000 or 1,000, multiplying by 10 6 times. So I'm really just going to be adding 6 zeros to my 58. And that gives me my answer. And there we go. That's the metric system and unit conversion. Now, hopefully, as you have seen this, you recognize that fractions are our friend. And that's what helps us do metric conversion, is knowing that equal quantities are going to cancel out whenever they are set up as a fraction. 12 inches over 1 foot equals 1. We're multiplying our quantity by 1. It's a really kind of somewhat abstract concept, but hopefully you've seen and you understand that as we multiply and as we get these numbers, we're just converting units. We're changing from one unit to another. We're not actually changing what the quantity is. We're just changing how we talk about it. And that's what unit conversion is all about. And it's just multiplying by the right amount of 1. And you can take those conversion factors and put them either way, whether I have 12 inches over 1 foot or whether I have 1 foot over 12 inches. Either way, it doesn't matter. The key is that when you set them up in your railroad track, that the units that you want to get rid of are on top and bottom, and they cancel out as you go. And then you get the final unit on the top. And then you simply multiply the fractions. You multiply the numerators together, you multiply the denominators together, and then you divide the numerator by the denominator, just like with any other fraction. And that's the way unit conversion goes. Hope you have some fun as you practice this and you get better at it and learning to solve the puzzles. This is a very, very important skill moving forward. When we start doing unit conversions with actual chemical quantities in a couple of weeks, in a couple of videos, this is going to be really important that you understand and know how to do this. And it makes your life a whole lot easier once you get this down. So please work at it, get it down, and we'll have lots of fun moving forward. Thanks for watching and have a day.